From sex and drugs to empowerment and yoga? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, here once again to drop the spiritual knowledge on you. This week I have an interview with Debbie Dixon, which is pretty cool. It's somebody who I've known of for years, but never only actually met once. It's kind of sad that I haven't been to any of her things because it's readily available. I always see her posters, like when I go to Yoga Smith for my cacao ceremonies, I always see a picture of her and one of her yoga things that she does, and I've seen her workshops, but just the timing wasn't right, and I just never gone. But she is big in this Seattle community, and I was really happy to get her on my podcast. So I'm excited for you to listen to that interview when it happens. But first, of course, is the part where Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion life coach and host of the Joyous Expansion podcast, talks about his life. Because if I can't be vulnerable, then how can I expect my interviewees to be vulnerable? Or guests. I don't know why I don't say guests instead of interviewees. The last week and a half has been interesting. As if you are someone who follows my podcast, you notice that I am late. This is a Sunday, which I'm generally editing the next week's podcast. And right now I'm working on this week's podcast or last week's podcast, depending on how you believe weeks work, if weeks end on Sunday or start on Sunday. I always view ending on Sunday, but because you start work on Monday, but I can see how Sunday could be a start. It's arbitrary. You can pick Wednesday to be a start, really, if you really want to. I mean, it's just a day. It's just the way the mind works, my friend. It's just the way the mind works. So the last week and a half or 2 weeks have kind of been dominated with me taking a test that I took on Saturday. My foundations in ISTQB testing, which has been interesting to me. Part of me has been apprehensive about taking the test. When I come home and decide to study, I would generally procrastinate for 3 hours and then start studying from like 9 to 10 or so, 8 to 10, instead of getting home and studying like I planned. When I get to work, a lot of times because I'm allowed to study during work as that's part of my training, I would procrastinate on doing that and doing anything but listening to this video that I recorded. I bought a Udemy course and I would listen to this guy's videos, and it was very helpful. There's only a couple questions when I actually took the test that I know he did not talk about. I probably got those wrong as I was guessing, but it was 40 questions and you needed a 65%, which is 24. And I got 33 of them right, which is 82.5%, which is fine. Especially since that's my first test I've had taken since 10 years ago. When I graduated 2002, so 17 years ago, last time I was in college. And just that part of that, the big part of the fact that it cost me $225 to take that test. And if I didn't pass it, then I would be out $229. It's $29, not $25. And just the thought of not getting that money, because I'm reimbursed if I passed, I'm not reimbursed if I failed. And I felt the pressure, plus all the testers need to be ITCQB foundational certified at my job, and I just kept on pushing it back, even though I've been a full-time employee for 8 months now. And before that, I was a contractor for 6 months. So all that time, I couldn't have got that foundation course, but let finances get in my way and procrastination of not wanting to take it. But the funny part is, I've done this job for 15 years. So the studying a lot of it was learning the names of the official names of the things that I did, because I always did something like equivalence partitioning or boundary value, but I never called them boundary value casing or equivalence partitioning. So learning exactly that. Some questions were based off reviews, and I've never actually been through a formal review in my 16 years as a software tester. So learning that terminology and but the interesting part for me is the fact that I was procrastinating. There's still a part of me that doesn't handle stress well, that doesn't handle anxiety well. And one of my goals in life was that nothing on the outside can affect the inside. When you have no enemies on the inside, no enemies on the outside can do no harm. And so thinking about that aspect of my life, how in the last couple months, something as simple as taking this test, because how you do anything is how you do everything. It's just a way to look at it. But at the same time, awareness is always the first step towards change. And even if you look at that, I look at my Church of Awesome, that I haven't done as much as I planned on doing. I'm still procrastinating that. And procrastination is a very interesting thing. I was taking an Andy Dooley class. Andy Dooley, the brother of Mike Dooley from Infinite Possibilities. They both actually teach the Infinite Possibilities, Train the Trainer, and they both go to Solapalooza. Andy Dooley is an awesome guy, so I suggest you check him out. Activation Vibration is such a fun course that he teaches. But one thing I went to his course last time he was in Seattle. It was a one-day thing, and he talked about procrastination, how procrastination is pain, but it's trying to delay pain, but also causes pain at the same time. And you want to visualize the pain that procrastination is actually causing rather than doing it, because a lot of times the anticipation of pain is just as painful, because that's how our minds work. Our minds don't really notice the difference between reality and our imagination, especially when it comes to pain and the like. You can imagine yourself, the old thing where you imagine yourself tasting a sour lemon, and all of a sudden your saliva will increase and you'll actually feel the parts of sour affect your mouth. It's the more you actually imagine that, and the clearer you imagine that lemon in your mouth, the more it'll actually affect you. And so the more you procrastinate, you're actually causing pain in your life. And when you actually do it, the thing you're procrastinating on, it's generally a relief of pain. And 9 times out of 10, it's less painful to do it than to go through that procrastination. And I'll be honest, I know so many things intellectually and so many things, but sometimes putting in the practice is sort of difficult, and this one for me has been. I've been procrastinating a little too much. This is Sunday. I have to get this podcast out. I want to start editing next week's podcast. I need to get the Church of Awesome out, and it's almost 1 p.m. and at 3 I'm playing some board games, so hopefully I'll be able to get that out. Then I want to get this out, and then I want to update Buffer with all my pictures, and so those are all the things I want to get accomplished today. But when I woke up today, I was tired and I slept. Anyway, though, I got the editing done. I'm doing this part, so sometimes you have to look at what you did correct, and I am getting this part correct. Well, speaking of getting life correct, I have an interview with Debbie Dixon. I am very excited for it, and I'm sure you will love it too. Debbie Dixon, author of Path to Freedom, Your Guide to Living the Life of Your Dreams, is a life coach, inspirational speaker, yoga teacher, and founder of Love is the Truth, an organization that recognizes the power of love to heal and overcome adversity, with a focus on women and children who have been or are currently compromised and are feeling trapped by their circumstances and have developed patterns of negative thinking, low self-esteem, unhealthy lifestyles, and addiction or abuse. Having come from abusive relationships, addictions, sex trafficking, lack of self-worth, incarceration herself, Debbie relates to and understands the feeling of me against the world and how dreaming about a better life gets lost when you are concerned about your next meal. The programs she offers are the same things that saved her life and pulled her from the trenches into a life filled with joy, infinite abundance, love, and happiness. And now, here's my interview with Debbie Dixon. Hello, Debbie, and welcome to my podcast.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
I am excited to have you on. I've been in the Seattle area for these metaphysical things, and I keep on seeing your posters around or classes that you see on meetups and stuff. So it's really cool to actually have you on my podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited for this journey, have this conversation with you.
So I'm curious, a lot of people who are going through this spiritual awakening don't always start out that way. How did you start out?
Well, yes, it's definitely been a journey. It's interesting because people that meet me, oftentimes they That's what we do naturally, is throw people into a category. We decide based on what we're seeing, oh, what this person's life must look like and where they've come from and what their experience has been. And I think a lot of people see me and right away draw the conclusion that her life has been easy, she's got it together and everything works for Debbie. And of course, she can talk about how to live a joy-filled life and be in your passion and purpose because it's always been easy for her. That's definitely not the case. I don't know if you want me to launch into really the whole journey, but it's, yeah. Okay.
Start from the beginning.
I will.
I don't know. Let's see
ahead.
if you get to the part that really stood out to me, what you said.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I started, obviously we never really know we're starting onto the spiritual path. We have no idea. There's just this, we just know we don't like where we are. And that was me. I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, which a lot of people have that experience. Mine consisted of, I was sexually abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, all of those things. It was a very uncomfortable experience. And I ended up, as most of us are, searching for some sort of love, some sort of acceptance, self-worth. I ended up in a relationship and pregnant by the time I was 17. Before that, I'd already been pushed out of my home. And so I was homeless, 15. It wasn't an easy path. Having a baby at 17 and with the belief system that had been instilled in me due to the abuse I had experienced, I was really stuck in this me against the world mentality. I expected life to suck and people to be bad, that wake up and put my armor on. I was ready to take on the world. I was that person that would walk into a room and then make sure that I was always closest to the door so I could exit if I needed to. I was prepared for the fight. Luckily, and you never know why this happens or how this happens. I feel that the first sort of awakening moment was giving birth to my son at 17, because that was my first experience with love. I had never really known what love was until I looked into his eyes, and that opened something in me. That this discovery of this feeling I could have for somebody else and the way he looked at me and depended on me was the same. It was this unconditional love. That was profound, and that started the shift. Although I was still stuck in this really low consciousness, and my life, my environment, everything reflected what was happening within me and my belief system, which was awful. I ended up developing beliefs about my self-worth that from the sexual abuse, for example, one of the beliefs I had developed was that my worth was based on my sexuality. I was just an easy target for the sex industry. So I ended up moving into adult entertainment. At the same time, I was on my own and I was in this me against the world situation. My relationship with my son's dad was not healthy. I didn't know how to choose a healthy experience or a healthy relationship. So he was abusive. Once I had my son, I had this profound sense of love for him. I wanted to protect him, that I left that relationship because I didn't know my worth, my self-worth. It was really just, I got to protect this child. Grateful for that. I'm so grateful for my son. Leaving that relationship, and it actually ended up in hiding. So that was a little bit hard. Again, if you're in hiding, I was trying to put myself through college. So a lot of big steps. It was just really easy to shift into the sex industry, adult entertainment. It seemed like the only option. Sometimes we're moving through life with these belief systems that create these filters where you really can't see any other path. Now, looking back, I can look back and go, oh, there were so many other options for you. But I remember being in those shoes and I could not see any other way. Because of that, because I can look back and know that for me, it felt like there was no other way. I know that there's other people in my shoes right now. They can't see the other path either. And so that's why a big piece of me now in my job and my goal is to go and assist people out of that place because I've been there. The way that I found my way out was, here I was stuck in the sex industry. I ended up, one thing after the other was like a snowball effect. I ended up getting buried under tickets, violations, just random things that happen in the sex industry. You can't go to work and not use alcohol, not use drugs. It's just impossible to place yourself in those circumstances and not numb. So I was using these tools that I'd been using for a long time as self-medicating to numb myself. It ended up, again, putting me in this place of me against the world. And I was constantly prepared for the battle. And so I got buried under tickets and violations. And most of them were just simple, like car tickets for speeding. But if I didn't pay them, suddenly it became a warrant. And then I was, driving without a license and suspended license. And then it just went one thing after the other, snowballing. Again, I could barely pay my light bill and, I have this baby dependent on me, and I'm trying to go to college. And now it seems like even the good guys, the police and all these people are after me. And I ended up in jail a lot of times because of these things. And I really couldn't see my way out. I mean, it's like the hole gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was just being buried. And hope was gone. There was no hope. And in that hopeless place, it's really easy to just keep using drugs, keep doing all of that. Another, I guess, climactic moment, and a moment that was profoundly impactful for me, was a time when I was in jail. I had been just locked up, and I was in a holding cell at the time, so I hadn't been taken back into custody. But I'm sitting in a holding cell, and I have probably 10 or 15 other women in that holding cell with me. I was sitting crouched up against a corner and looking at everybody and thinking how different I was, how I didn't deserve to be there and they did. I was different than them. Look at them. They're all drug addicts and gross, and I'm different. And why can't these people see that? The jailers are going to come and they're going to let me out. They know I don't belong here. And then the jailer came over and he took me out. And there's a process called PR where you get this option to possibly, if they think that you're suitable to come back to court, that they'll release you. And so I'm like, of course they're going to let me go. They don't think I deserve to be here. I was wrong. He ended up, saying that no and placing me back in the holding cell. I'm like, what's happening? How is this? No, you're supposed to be releasing me. So to sit back in there, and I'm trying to, connect with this and understand, why would they put me back in here? And now they're going to actually lock me up. They're going to take me. I really was trying to process this. And suddenly I had this awakening moment. My brother had always been a drug addict. I had watched him just like I was looking at these women. I saw him as beneath me because he had this ravaging drug problem. Essentially, he was a crackhead. He was controlled by the substance. And I was different, even though I'm in the same, I'm doing drugs as well, right? I'm utilizing the same things. I couldn't see it. I just saw him. So in this moment, I stepped outside of myself. And I thought, what if somebody was looking at me the way I would look at him, or the way I was looking at all these women? Would they actually see me as one of them? I mean, what is it that separates me from them? Birds of a feather flock together. Maybe to the outside world, I am no different. And in that moment, something clicked. It was just, oh my goodness, I need to take back control. I don't want the world to see me as one of them. And how can I shift that? How can I change that? I decided from that moment on, I was never going to let them take my power again. No matter what it took, I was not going to. So I made this conscious decision that I was going to decide how much I owed the courts, and I was going to pay it back. Again, I'm a single mom. In Seattle, there was a lot of stuff happening at the time. Clubs were being busted. Things were going down. It was really difficult to make money. So I decided to pack up my bag and I went to California. I stayed with a friend. I found a club and became determined. I knew that I needed to make a minimum of $10,000 before I could return and even get above water, kind of above water. So I went to California and worked. I worked for 30 days straight, to the point where my toes were bleeding. I had ripped off toenails. I had bandages around my feet. It was crazy, and ended up making actually $13,000. And at that point, I decided to come back. I packed up and came back to Seattle, called up every courthouse, and did what most people wouldn't do. This was, again, another pivotal place, because the consciousness I was in was fear-based, me against the world. So now I have $13,000. I'm a single mom, and at that point, I was living in a hotel. So most people would say, hey, I could take this $13,000. I could buy a new TV. I could get a new outfit. I could do something with this. It's really hard to release that comfort of having that money. But for me, I had made the decision that I was going to buy my freedom. And I took that $13,000. I called up every courthouse. I said, how much do I owe you? I drove to the courthouse and paid them. It ended up costing a little bit more than $13,000, and I was free. And from that moment on, I just feel like it was almost as if the universe had placed in front of me this, okay, what do you want? I'm going to give you the opportunity to do it. You're going to have to work really hard. If you do it and then you follow through with that promise, if I provide you with that money that you're asking for and then you follow through, I'm going to give you a glimpse of freedom. And that's exactly what happened. I believe it was me paying back the karma bank, as if all the way through life, all of the choices I had made when it was in me against the world. I mean, to survive and raise a child, a baby at 17, homeless at 15, I stole from stores. I had to. Oftentimes I had to steal formula, diapers. And in my mind, I was writing it off as, well, I have to. Nobody else can help me. I don't have any other choice. Sometimes I would steal things, take them back to take that money to pay the power bill so I could keep my lights on. For me, I felt like as I was climbing out of this mountain and I was able to earn this $13,000, that was me paying back all of that karma. And, it was only step one. There was many other steps after that. And through that process, I've discovered meditation, and all of those things have helped now to continue leading me up the path, up the mountain. The first step, I think, that really elevated my consciousness, really released me from the things that were holding me down, was purification, was the moment I decided to let go of the drugs, let go of the alcohol, stop smoking, a habit that I'd had since I was 12. All of these things, those were definitely huge, because you don't know who you are until you've experienced your energy purified of all of it. No drugs from the doctor, no drugs from, just completely pure in your body. And from that, I had a baseline of who I was and how I felt and my energy. And I could sit with me and be with me. Meditation became possible in that space, really meditation, where I could be at peace. So that was the next step, I think, to my path to freedom. And it's
Even
just
no
been
caffeine?
Caffeine, actually, I do. Caffeine was huge. I did quit that when I quit the smoking, because the two were tied together so closely in habitual nature that every time that I would drink coffee, I would smoke. I had to notice my habits. It was a big part of this transition. It was becoming aware of my habits, and, how really the smoking was just habitual. It was something like suddenly somebody would call me on the phone. The moment I picked up the phone, I craved a cigarette, because that was a habit. If I was on the phone, I was smoking. What I stopped doing, honestly, when I quit smoking, for about 2 or 3 weeks, I actually didn't talk on the phone either. I kind of isolated myself. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just laughing.
Oh, but I did. Yeah, I isolated myself. I didn't tell anybody that I was going to quit smoking either. I didn't want any expectations. And I didn't smoke my last cigarette in the pack. I didn't decide that. I've actually helped many people quit smoking now. It's kind of a weird thing that is sort of a tangent that this has led me down. But I didn't let myself, so I didn't have this packs of cigarettes. I would actually have a pack of cigarettes there. I had probably 3 packs of cigarettes that were full sitting around my house. So it wasn't that I didn't have cigarettes. It was that I was choosing not to smoke them. They were right there. I could, but I didn't want to. And that, I think, stepping into my power and reminding myself every time I looked at the cigarettes that I don't want them, instead of noticing the lack of the cigarette and having the craving. That was huge. And then, so I did quit the coffee. I do drink coffee from time to time now, but I notice it. If it's something that becomes a habit where I need the coffee, if I don't have the coffee, somehow I'm different, tired, I'm sleepy, I can't get it together, well, then I'll purify my body again. I might go 2 or 3 weeks without coffee.
Can you explain what you mean by stepping into your power? How exactly do you do that?
Oh, how do I step into my power? Learning that that was a big portion of my journey, was learning that I'm in control of my life, that I'm creating my life and my circumstances. If I want to see a life of happiness and joy and bliss and, where life is working for me, I have to alter the way that I'm showing up to the world. I have to alter the way that thinking about the world. I have to start looking and analyzing my beliefs, because they're the filters that I see the world through. A lot of ways that we step into our power, but when we recognize that you're in control, you're creating your destiny, that it's not just the world showing up and you reacting to the world, but instead, what if you decide how the world's going to show up, and then you live in that space? And that was kind of the shift that I made. I started to alter and change everything that was in my life, not just drugs and alcohol and those sort of things, but the people that I was around. I started looking at them and saying, are these people that are impacting me in a positive way or a negative way? Do I feel yucky when I'm around them, or do I feel good? And if I didn't feel good, then I gave myself permission to not have to be around them. That was a big step. Noticing places that I would go to. If I didn't feel good in that place, then why was I putting myself in that place? A huge thing that really I think was a pivotal shift for me was TV. Noticing TV, television programming is what it's called. So what sort of programming do I want to place in myself? And am I feeding fear in what I'm watching? So fear is huge in stifling the way that we show up to the world and stopping us from really showing up to our power. Because if we're fearful about everything, we're going to contract instead of expanding into life. Just the idea of fear, you think of contraction. And when we think of joy, we think of expansion. Those are the two, joyous expansion. Those are the two opposing energies. So when we're in fear, we're contracting. And there's so many television shows that are designed around creating a fear-based response. We're almost addicted to it. I started to notice, man, here I am watching this show. It was like CSI or something. And after the show was over, I would instantly be wanting to lock my doors, double check, are they locked? Worried about every sound, having trouble sleeping because my mind would be in that place. So I just decided to do a test run. And I decided I'm going to go a month without any negative TV, only TV that was happy based. And I'd be really conscious of what the message is in the show. Is it leaving me feel light and happy, or am I feeling happy? And I only allowed myself to watch those things. So I turned off news. I didn't even read any articles. If anything came across that if the title spoke to fear, I turned away from it. And that game changer. Suddenly, it was like I was free. It was almost as if I had been caught in some sort of net, or a virus had attacked my system called fear. And suddenly I was able to experience life unbound. And that truly was me stepping into my power.
What does living life unbound look like?
Well, for me, living life unbound is living life showing up in love. I have these 7 steps to intention, the power of intention. One of them is say yes to new experiences. It's really difficult to do that when you're in fear. Saying yes to new experiences, because there's so many reasons not to. And if we're in fear, we're going to feed those reasons. We're going to tune into that voice. And suddenly we'll talk ourselves out of it. And I decided that the one step is, if you've asked the universe for a new experience, you want something new happening in your life, then you have to be willing to step into the uncomfortable, because everything new is going to feel slightly uncomfortable at first. So saying yes to new experiences, for example, ask the universe. I would say again, because I'm not now at the mercy of life. I'm not just waiting for life to show up. Living unbound was, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to wake up and decide how it's going to go down, how my day is going to show up. I'm going to align with intention from the moment I wake up. That would look like, okay, today is going to be an amazing day. I'm going to have 3 appointments or 2 classes, and people are going to emerge from those appointments feeling lighter and freer because of whatever transpired in that space. I would allow for miracles. Today, something amazing is going to happen. It's going to work out better than I'm even capable of coming up with or imagining. I would kind of always allow for the miracle. I'd set myself up in the morning for this intention of how my day is going to unfold. And then throughout the day, piece by piece, I would kind of set out these intentions. Hey, today I intend to meet somebody who's going to change the direction of my path. They're going to empower me somehow. And then I would just wait for it. So the problem is that you have to, if you're going to live that way, you have to be willing to step onto that path when it shows up. If I decided I'm going to meet somebody who's going to powerfully impact me, but say that I'm driving to work and now there's a detour in the street. And again, I'm going on the same path that I drive every single day. And now there's a detour. And if I get frustrated and mad that I can't go on my same path, instead of being willing to go on the detour and just flowing with and knowing that that is perfect. And that's the way that viewing the world in the say yes mentality is. You have to be willing to flow with that detour and know that it's leading you towards your desired result, whatever that is.
That sounds like a very exciting way to live.
It is. You're right. That's it is. You have to be, I think, willing to sort of live at the edge of your seat constantly, but you have to expect that life is working out for you, that everything is happening for you, not against you. So that's the biggest shift. If you view that detour as why me? This is happening to me, right? That's very different than saying, oh, great, I'm being detoured. Something amazing is happening over this way. Thank you, right? Instead of viewing it that way. And so we have to constantly be just knowing that everything is happening for our highest and best good and happening for us, not against us. And if you view the world that way, then you're excited for the detours. You're excited when I always tell my clients, if somebody calls me up and, oh man, you don't know what happened. I lost my job today. I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, get excited. Are you kidding me? Remember when we were just talking about this last week and you were telling me how much you hate this job and how you want something bigger and better? And now the job is leaving you. Why are you not excited? The universe has granted your wish. All you need to do now is sit down and ask yourself what you want and focus on that. Okay, that job's gone. Great. We've cleared the path. What do you want in front of you right now? And start to just line up with your desired results. Know that you have this clean slate. Yippee, right? Get excited because that's viewing the world from everything is happening for me, not against me. The person that views the world that it's against me is viewing it as, I lost my job, poor me. Now this is my victim story. And I can make excuses for all the reasons that now this happens, this happens, this happens, instead of taking control and going, this is happening for me. Yay. What do I want? That's living in a boundless mentality and really stepping into your power.
So in helping other people live unbounded and into their power, what has been a cool success story that you can share with us?
Oh my goodness. There's limitless. Gosh, let me think of something really, really cool. Some of this, I guess the success stories that I tell over and over again. I have, so if you've heard these stories before, sorry, if you're tuning into this and you've heard me talk, but every day, every single day I get emails from people telling me how their life has changed. And again, just those conversations where somebody tells me they lost their job. And then I sit them down and say, what do you want? And then they call me the next day and go, you're not going to believe this. I have this job, this interview showing up and it's just what I want, and then I keep them again, focused on, okay, so don't feel like you're at the mercy of the world as you step into this job. You're interviewing them. Right? You're deciding as you look at this job, is this really going to fit your needs? Don't just jump into another job just because it's available. And so many people that I work with will then end up and maybe they get that job and then that one doesn't work out and then the next one and the next one and until they keep filtering down exactly what they want. That's just the journey of life. But a really good example is when I first started doing these workshops about 15 years ago, came up with this program called Realizing Your Dreams. And I thought, wow, this would be really powerful if we sit in this group setting and everybody just says out loud, because it's not often enough that we're willing to share our dreams in a space with other people. Usually we keep them to ourselves. And in fact, we never even live them because they just we push them down a little bit, like it's not important. So I thought, what if I empower this group and I have them actually sit in the space in the center and just explain what they want from an infinite place? I gave them this infinite space to dream from. I said, hey, imagine that you have a genie or a cauldron in front of you that just had infinite possibilities, or you had a magic wand. So whatever you wanted would be instantaneously the moment you decided. What would you want from that space? And I had them lay down their relationships. So your ideal relationship, what would that look like? Your ideal job, career, the way that you're showing up in the world, your ideal body, all of these things, what would it be? And we went through one by one. So this was actually a profound moment for me on my journey, because I thought, well, of course, everybody's going to show up and they're going to have all of these dreams and it's going to be amazing. I go to the very first person and she struggled with saying any sort of dream. So it's like the first thing she's like, well, I guess I wish that my husband wasn't so complainy, and I wish that I really like my place. I guess 2 bedrooms is enough, but I guess it would be nice if I had a little more space. I told her she could dream from an infinite place. I gave them a week to prepare, and that's what she came up with, which most of it was talking about what she didn't want. I was like, wait a minute. It was really cool in the group setting because I was asking everybody in the group. I mean, do you guys hear this? If you were granting her wish, you're kind of seeing a negative picture. You're not placing her in some sort of dream home with a dream relationship. She's painted this picture of sort of negativity. So let's get her to reword this in a way that's positive, where we're all feeling good and we're visualizing for her in her dream. I sat there with her going back and forth for about 20 minutes, just trying to get anything out of her that came forth as a wish. And the first thing, and she finally said, well, I've kind of always dreamed of being a dancer. I was like, oh my gosh, well, there we go. Like, what kind of dancer? What do you want? She goes, well, I watch Dancing with the Stars, and I just wish so much that I could do that. And I was like, why not? Why don't you? She said, well, I've always danced before. I used to when I was younger, but then I got married and had kids, and my husband's kind of jealous. And, I just sort of stopped. I said, well, but you could easily have that. That's not like this dream that's out of reach. You could dance right now. She was like, no, no, no. In her mind, she had created so many barriers and blocks, she really couldn't see it. She really couldn't see how it was possible. And I said, well, what if just for a moment that you kind of like, maybe just setting apart some space in your home and creating a little bit of room, maybe play some music and you just dance there. And she was like, I don't know. I don't think. And before she left that day, she was walking out and I said, the funniest thing was she had said that her husband was jealous, and that was one of her biggest reasons for not pursuing dancing. And I had said, what if just for a moment you sit here with me, close your eyes, and visualize yourself on the stage and that you're dancing and you're just so happy. And I want you to imagine that your husband's in the audience, he's looking at you, and he's your biggest fan. You see his adoring eyes, and he's applauding louder than anybody else. And she was like, oh, well, I don't know. That just seems so impossible. And she left that day. We were having these meetings weekly. She came back to me a week later and she said, well, I have an announcement for everybody. And everybody's like, yeah. And she said, well, I created some space in my home and I've been dancing. It's like, this is amazing. And so this was just fantastic because she had taken one step in that direction. It's very small, but it was a step. Then she comes back to us the next week and she goes, I actually cleared out the entire room and made a dance studio. I put up mirrors. I did all of this stuff and I'm really enjoying it. What's really amazing about this particular story is within 6 months, this woman had created a whole new persona for herself. She'd given herself a name, a dancer's name. She was performing in big audiences, things like at the Puyallup Fair as a belly dancer and doing some other sort of choreographed dancing. This was within 6 months. Within probably a year or two, I still followed her and we were still in connection. I saw a post that was on some sort of social media outlet where she had posted a picture of herself in her dance garb, and she had wrote at the bottom, I'm so happy to say that my husband is my biggest fan.
Wow, that's a big turnaround.
Yeah, it was huge. So here she is just stepping into her dreams. And it was such a simple dream, but for her, the blocks were huge.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. We are getting to the end of the podcast. And one thing I like to ask my podcast interviewees is for 1 minute of motivation. You can think of this as if you are a time traveler coming back to your 8-year-old self, but you only have 1 minute to convey everything that 8-year-old needs to know. Or you can think of it as condensing all your life purpose down to a minute.
Ooh, so you want me to just run for a minute talking about something inspiring?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly that.
All right. Oh man. Let's see. If I could go back and tell myself, I would tell myself to dream big. Decide right now that you are capable of literally anything. limitless. You're only limited by the beliefs that you have, and dream from that limitless space. Decide that you can have anything and be willing to step into it when it shows up. Just be willing to soar and know that you are worthy, that you deserve. Have limitless faith in these dreams coming true, and don't watch negative TV. Don't do drugs. Stay pure. For the biggest piece for me is to not only be willing to love others, but love yourself. Really love yourself. All of those things that you deem imperfections, those are all things that are just needing more and more love.
Nice, thank you. I have really enjoyed our time together, listening to your story, how you've hit a rock bottom and gaining the awareness that you want to make a change is the first step to any change is awareness. But not only gaining that awareness, making the decision to change your life by purifying yourself in such an amazing way. In fact, kind of creating like life experiments. What if I do this for 30 minutes? What if I do this for 30 days? I can see how that could help other people listening to your story and take their lives to a whole new level. So thank you so much for everything you do for this planet. And also thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it as well.
Awesome. May your day be special.
Thanks. Have a great day as well.
And there you have it, folks. That is my interview with Debbie Dixon. Wow, what a story. I remember when I first got her bio and I saw sex trafficking on there. I would have never guessed. There is something to what she said about making a picture about somebody based off what they look. And when they look like Debbie, who honestly, she's a very attractive woman. She's almost stereotypically attractive. And it's almost the same as if you look at my interview with Kat Kim, we actually talked about this as well. And honestly, you can't judge a book by its cover. Human beings have different experiences than what you imagine just by looking at them. We see this all the time in our lives. We base things on media and the world around us, but the reality is people are people. Some people have good experiences and some people have bad experiences. And it doesn't matter if they're attractive, if what race they are, where they're from. I remember getting into arguments with people back in the day that the average human being wouldn't do anything wrong if they had enough money to live and were able to house themselves, feed themselves, and entertain themselves. And some people are like, no, these people are evil. I'm like, no, people are mostly the same. And it's interesting going on that because I tend to have that issue, especially with, if you heard my story, you know, I used to put attractive women on pedestals and stuff like that. And talking to so many attractive women on my podcast and listening to their struggles and how many of them go to drugs. And you wouldn't think that off the top of your head. If you think drug addict and you look at a picture of Debbie Dixon, would that be the first face that pops into your head? And that's one of the problems with our society as a whole on how we judge people based off how they look rather than based off the contents of their character. And then learning about the contents of their character is the important part. And I probably talked way too long about what Debbie Dixon looks like. But also just hearing her story on how she got over her struggles and reached out to people. Again, reach out to people. Getting help is very important. She took classes. She talked to people. I don't know if she went to therapy. We didn't ask that. Or rehab like the other people, Sherazad, Kat Kim, and the like, who also went through similar things. But I'm sure that the yoga and all the teaching and the reaching out for help certainly helped her after she made that decision. Also making the decision and being aware. One thing that is easy in life, especially if you're in personal development, especially if you're in this space, is lying to yourself. We become so good at lying to ourselves and thinking our lives are different than what it is, but we need to look at ourselves and be honest. It's about the reality of the situation. And Debbie, recognizing the reality of her situation, allowed her to make that change and really take things to a whole new level. Being able to abstain herself on everything that she felt didn't serve her life, that increased her fear, the watching news, the drinking alcohol, the smoking, even the caffeine, anything that was a stimulant. This is a practically Whole30 to another level so that she can truly get in touch with herself. I mean, imagine just taking 30 days and just being 100% clean, only using the internet if you need to, don't watching TV, read, eating food that just serves you, no sugar, no processed food, just food that you cook yourself, no coffee, no any of that stuff, just for 30 days, living that way and just noticing how you are in your body. Not to make this something you do for the rest of your life. That's one mistake people make with the Whole 30. The point of the Whole 30, if you look that up, isn't to do that for the rest of your life. It's to eliminate everything and then slowly put things back in so you notice what feels good and what doesn't. And when you allow yourself to cleanse in that kind of way, you notice what feels good and what doesn't. I mean, I've done this a couple times. It hasn't stuck because I'm a sugar addict. But at the same time, every time I done that, I notice things like how much I enjoy fresh salt that I add to my food rather than sodium in prepackaged food. Both of them feel different to my body. Eating one of those prepackaged frozen dinners, that salt doesn't taste as good to me. I used to think I didn't like salt. It wasn't until I cleansed myself with a Whole 30 diet and had nothing but, non-processed food that I started craving salt and wanting salt and noticing the difference of putting like a Himalayan sea salt or Celtic sea salt, some sort of nice, pure salt on my food made me feel better than any processed food. I was able to notice that difference. I'm just using that as my example. But Debbie is a special person. She has a website. She took her first yoga class in 1997, and the spark was almost instantaneous, having studied and taught yogic philosophy for many years before being formally introduced to asana, taking her studies to have given her the opportunity to experience with her own mind, body, and spirit the miracles this practice is capable of creating in one life. 10 years ago, she taught her first yoga class, and shortly after she opened the 7 Hot Yoga Studio community she owns and have run for over 4 years. Through her workshops, retreats, and seminars, she gives people the tools to change their thinking, shifting their consciousness, and heal their lives. Her ultimate goal is to ignite spiritual health in others. So she has created a guide out of the mundane cycle of waking up, working, going to bed, and into a passionate, driven, purpose-filled life where wishes are granted instantly, prayers are answered, and love, light, peace, and happiness exist in every breath. She provides an easy-to-use instruction manual for creating a life where you are no longer an observer of the life of your dreams, but a participant. So if you're ready to be a participant in your life, check out her website at www.loveisthetruth.org to see how you too can become part of her love tribe. Every week, she offers Soulful Sunday Talks at Lifetime Fitness in Bellevue. She offers one-on-one coaching, and this year is offering transformational retreats to Egypt, Peru, and Costa Rica. Thank you for listening to this episode of my podcast. I truly appreciate you. If you like it, please like and subscribe, leave a review, give some stars. However you are listening to this, if you want to email me for whatever reason, if you like this episode, or if you're like, man, you can do better if you do this, you can email me at BRE2TsDUPR2Es@joyousexpansion.com. You can also check out more about me at www.joyousexpansion.com. There, I have a free ebook about breaking through the prisons of fear. You can also listen to me on 7 Stone Radio at the Church of Awesome podcast to hear me talk about how to live an amazing, joyful life. And you can also find me on Instagram at Joyous Expansion, Twitter at Joyous Expansion, and at Facebook at Increase Your Joy. So once again, I thank you for listening to my podcast. Once again, I'm Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion life coach, champion of authentic joy, catalyst of transformation for the Church of Awesome, wishing you once again to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play that jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com JoyousExpansion.com Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach, good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue, I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com JoyousExpansion.com Yeah.